Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inside Out Engineering podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of my dear friends, Blake Sanchez. Blake and I go way back, so you're going to hear a little bit about our time working together, some leaders that we've really respected, some spaces where we've stumbled or been unsuccessful, as well as places where we've really been thriving. Blake has a very diverse background. He's worked in a lot of different engineering companies, lots of different sizes, startup all the way up to big corporate environments. He's even started his own business in the past. And we're going to talk a lot about our experiences. We're going to weave in a lot of EQ into the conversation. And we'll even talk about his secret weapon, the fact that he is married to a therapist and how that has been his key to being such a successful, emotionally intelligent leader. So yeah, let's dive into it. Without further ado, here's Nikki and Blake.
Do like a turn reveal.
Welcome to the podcast. Okay, Blake, thank you for hanging out with me today. I am so excited to talk about you and your origin story and some other fun things that we're going to get into today. What made you want to be an engineer? Why did you decide to go to school to be an engineer?
Always knew. No, I was, good at math, good at science, terrible at English and literature and history, and good student overall. But my dad is a machinist, and I grew up around a machine shop. I learned how to weld and run a CNC mill and all these things pretty early on, even before I went to college. And he would say, "You don't want my job. You want the guy who hands me the drawings job. You want the engineer's job." So I was like, I guess I need to go to school, be an engineer. Neither of my parents went to college. My mom actually did go back and get a 2-year degree after I was in college, which was very impressive. But my dad didn't even graduate high school. So it was kind of a new thing, both of our families. A lot of pushing to go and do that. But engineering made the most sense because I liked taking things apart. I liked math, and robotics was just captivating. That's where I wanted to go.
So what is your engineering degree in specifically?
So yeah, I studied mechanical engineering, but right out of school, the automation and robotics and controls and machine vision and software kind of just very quickly creeped into that. So, but my schooling is in mechanical engineering.
So got a degree in mechanical engineering. It sounds like this was just natural. I think you're absolutely right. You're just born to be an engineer, and I love it.
Yeah.
How do you use it today? So you came out of school, immediately got into automation and machining. Is that something that you're still doing, or is that what you wanted to do immediately out of school? Do you feel like you're actively using your degree the way you wanted to be using it?
Right out of school, definitely used it the way that I was taught to use it, in school. Like the machine vision company I worked for right away, I had to do a lot of mechanical designs, and it was very heavy on my CAD skills. I actually interned when I was still in school. I interned for a land survey company, and they didn't even want to hire me because I had the wrong degree. But they were very close to where I was living, and I needed money. And I went and talked to the guy until he gave me a job just to do the drafting. Never going to use any of those skills again because it was like land topology surveys for water flow and things like that. But definitely, I think the foundations of the engineering is just problem solving. So learning how to solve the problems was really the most useful part. But mechanical, there was a little bit of instruments and controls in my education, but most of it, all that automation skill was learned on the job. I think learning how the tools you had to use, like learning how CAD and FMEA actually works under the hood, was really critical in the school, because when you get into the applications, you're extending that base knowledge into something that you haven't done before, because you're not going to do what you do in your job when you're in school.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding how the tool worked and what it could do and what it couldn't do really was kind of the break point on being successful as an engineer.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I feel like I don't run into enough engineers that are actually using or got to use their degree in the exact way that they intended. Has that been your experience? Do you feel as a rarity, or has most of your career been surrounded by people that also are doing exactly what their degree wanted? Or they?
It's a mix, but I feel like it's the foundation, and you're extending. I mean, the learning doesn't stop right then when you finish your school.
Sure.
But the controls and the machine vision and the electrical side and the software side and the leadership skills that I had to pick up to get to where I am now, those were not taught in school. That's all gained skills. But I had that foundation of problem solving that kind of built that trajectory.
So I love where you're going with this. How did you kind of develop these skills? Because it sounds like I know personally, right, that you are now an engineering leader, so you lead engineers. How did you make that transition from the individual contributor to the leader? How did you kind of navigate that? And was it a choice that you made, or was it kind of thrust upon you?
It was a little bit of both. It was definitely a choice, but the need was thrust into the group. Working for smaller businesses kind of has that need, and usually not a lot of people to fill those shoes. If I had started at a large corporation, I may not have been in the same trajectory that I am today. I mean, I probably would have gotten there eventually, but it would have been definitely maybe a longer career path. But working at smaller businesses and startups, I worked for myself for a while and kind of built a business. A lot of those things were trial by fire. My first job was for a machine vision company that had their own machine vision software and technology. And then I was doing the applications where it was building the machinery around it
Mhm.
and doing all this work. And the very first machine I ever built um, was purely trial by fire. And I don't know if you want to get into that later. But, it
Why not?
was
Do it.
my boss. I was pretty cocky. I had just graduated. I was pretty proud of what I'd done.
Yeah.
And my boss knew that. And he was an engineer, and he was kind of supporting. He was like, well, this is a smaller project. And it was like a workstation that the vision system would inspect these plastic injection molded automotive parts. They were like a transmission part that had like a little stick with some molded on teeth. And you would load a tray and it would go in, present the parts to the cameras that were all down the side, light it, take the pictures, and then stamp them if they were good or bad. And then
Mhm.
the operator would take them out and dump the bad ones and keep the good ones. And I built this whole thing. The controls panel that was in the back of it had an HMI and all the pneumatics and electrical components and motors and all that stuff. And I wrote the software that did the HMI. It all looked pretty good. And when I was going to turn it on and start testing it out, my boss came in and was like, "Smoke test," and chuckled. And I plugged it in and turned it on, and smoke came out. The smoke test was a real thing.
Oh my
He laughed. He expected there to be some failure, maybe not to the level of short circuiting an electrical panel and a bunch of smoke coming out of a panel, but uh, like he kind of stopped and he didn't scold me, but he said, "Well, you're gonna have to do it again, and I highly suggest that you lean on some of the other engineers or even myself this time, so you can get some insight, maybe learn some things that you didn't learn in school."
Mm.
So very humbling experience, but I needed it
Yeah.
because I was that cocky young kid. Um, and I've seen that in other engineers, and I like to challenge them and give them a safety net and a place to trial
Mhm.
their skills out. And I mean, failure is an opportunity for growth. So
Totally.
I haven't short circuited a panel since then, which is pretty good.
It only takes one.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a pretty embarrassing moment
Yeah. I
among many. There were several more.
yeah. I love that. I love that story for so many reasons, but I really love the fact that your leader created a psychologically safe environment for you to fail. And I know this was way before any of the language existed and we didn't talk about
Yeah,
these kind of things, but I do think that's so important for us as engineers is to fail because you're absolutely right. We learn more by failing than when things go right. Because I think you again demonstrated that so perfectly because we come out of school so cocky. Like that's you're absolutely right. Like I'm an engineer. I know everything. I've been trained. I have the degree. I'm going to take this theory and put it into real life. And you hit on something that is what I talk about a ton with my university students. The simple fact that just because it works when you're in school does not mean it's going to work in the real world. Because in school, you are operating under ideal conditions and you don't always have the training when you're in school to deal with the unexpected and the unknowns. And that's why it is so important to ask for help and to lean on other people. Um, as it's something that we're not taught. And I don't know about you, but I had this one professor in school say to us, in no world are you ever going to be locked in a room with a pencil and a calculator and told to build a rocket ship. You're always going to have access to people and to resources that will help you do your job. And it is a hard lesson for a lot of us young engineers to learn. The simple fact that we do need to ask for help. We don't know as much as we think we do, even though that's what we're kind of told when we're in school is you are going to be the smartest one. You are the expert. You have to come in with the confidence to know all the answers, but you simply will not have all the answers. Yeah. Well, thank you for that story. So you learned very early on the power of asking for help and the power of mentorship and learning from others. How do you think that's shaped how you've become as a leader? Because I know you mentioned you are very mindful of creating those environments for your own team. What are some ways that you've been able to do that successfully in many industries? Because I know you've worked in big companies and small companies and lots of different disciplines.
Yeah. So one of the, I guess, frustrating things about working for that boss in the machine vision company early on, he wouldn't shy away from me talking about him. But one thing that was always frustrating is he would ask questions while I was in the middle of a project, and he could very quickly point out the problems. And it was from experience, and like he was very intuitive to know where the pitfalls were,
Mm-hmm.
and he did kind of support that trial by fire, and he did encourage me to work with my other peers to get some insights. But I think one of the things that I try to do now that he didn't necessarily do as much, and I had some other leaders down the road that did this more, and I had some really good mentors that helped a lot, but explaining the why behind it. And you and I both worked in the same organization where they were passing books around a lot, and one of the books that was given to me was Start with Why by Simon Sinek, which is great. But explaining the why behind everything. If your leader is making a decision and you really want to understand, like I want to understand how they came to that conclusion. I want to understand what went into that decision, why they know these things, why my version is wrong, or my why someone else's version is wrong. And I really try to facilitate that in my teams in a space where we have room to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that 100% of the time. We may never, if everyone's always questioning, we'll never get anywhere. But I want my team members, and I liked being in an environment where I knew I could have like my one-on-one with my boss, or it was a team meeting that was not with other teams and it was just my team, and we could ask those questions and really and stumble and test the boundaries and really understand the thought process that got me from where I am as an engineer today to where I will be as an engineer later. Whether that is building a prototype and breaking it, or whether it's just talking through something verbally. I mean, there's not always room to build and burn things and break things, but
Yeah.
some ability to have that room to work and think and stretch and grow is really important.
Yeah. And I love the way you framed that, because it also brings up the importance of having trust in your organization. And this might just be my experience, but I've noticed that if you are constantly being questioned why, it typically means that there's not a lot of trust in your organization. And we should question why. There should always be a healthy level of, why are we still doing it this way? Is there a better
Yeah.
way? Right? That is totally normal for every engineer to do at any stage of their career. But there's a difference in constantly questioning your leadership and constantly asking your leadership, why are we doing what we're doing? Why did you make that decision? And I know, we've talked about this at length previously, but so much of like a leader's job is just making decisions based on information that's given to them. And if you as the engineer are the ones giving your leaders the information to make informed decisions, and then you're still questioning why they made the decision, there's something deeper going on there.
Yeah.
So I know you and I are both really good at fielding those kind of questions and making sure we create trusting environments on our teams. Have you ever been in organizations or situations where that trust isn't there? Maybe you, either when it was you were an engineer or you as a leader, and how did you navigate that?
Absolutely. Before I worked for the machine vision company, the drafting company that I worked for, that he was reluctant to hire me because I was not my background, but he would have me print my drawings out on big D sheets on the table size pieces of paper,
Mhm.
which they went to site that size, so that was pretty normal.
Yeah.
But he'd have me print my drawings out and bring them to his desk, and he would take the red marker and just shit, shit, shit. And I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this, but he would just tell me what he really thought, like very quickly, and hand it back to me and tell me to do it again with a big red marker, and it was very frustrating because it shouldn't have been that job anyways. It wasn't my field, so I didn't understand what I was drawing anyways. I didn't
Mhm.
understand why it was wrong. But, yeah, that can be really frustrating, and it'll be really hard. I could see it being very hard for a lot of people to. I mean, it'd be hard for anybody to grow in that space. He had his good points too. I don't want to say he was a terrible boss, but and there's been other environments, especially in startups. Things are very high stress. Things are very fast pace, and money is being stretched thin. You got investment money a lot of times before you start making revenue, and even after you make some revenue, and like how do we spend that? And things get really stressful, and there's a lot of fights that you probably wouldn't see in a larger corporate setting that's a little bit more mature. But yeah, there's when people are resistant to change or don't agree with something, smart people will find smart ways to disrupt,
Mhm.
and it can be very challenging, and it can turn off a lot of people from even asking questions or wanting to grow or even wanting to stay around,
Mm,
which is always challenging.
yeah. So how, and I mean, I know this about you, so this is coming very much from my own experience of you, but I would love to know how you kind of keep yourself calm in those very high stress situations. Because I have been very fortunate to have worked with you in great situations and also high stress situations. And I've always seen you as this person that has an amazing way to like keep a level head and keep a very like calm tone of voice whenever we're talking about a emotionally charged situation, we'll just say. What are some of the things that you do to kind of keep yourself at that like regulated state? And is that really how you're feeling? Because it's definitely how it comes across to someone like me, that you are very in control of how you're feeling, and you come across very calmly.
Yeah, the version of me that you worked with was not the same version that I was a lot earlier on in my career.
Mm,
It's not easy, especially when you do really care about what you're working on,
mhm,
and you want to do things right, and you want to be proud of what you've done, and everybody wants to be proud of what they do. Nobody really wants to work on something that's just they just don't care if it succeeds or not. Like everybody wants something they've contributed to succeed, even if your part was very small.
yeah.
And people get passionate, and it is really hard to regulate. I have the benefit of I married a therapist, so I have a very powerful coach behind the scenes that has really shaped where I have gone with my leadership skills and communication skills, that I think I'm very lucky to have and wouldn't be the same otherwise. But it is hard to keep a cool head when things go bad, and when you feel like it might be your fault, or you know it's somebody else's fault and you're really mad about it, and then you're all going to look bad because of something. At the point that you and I worked together, I had already failed in a business, been fired from a job while I was on vacation, which is not fun. And we can talk about that, but that was a rough point in career. But I had already kind of let go of some of the ego of like, this is my job. And then I'm still a person outside of this job. Like I'm working because I need money. That's all the only reason we're all working. If we didn't need money, I'd probably still find something creative to do, but I wouldn't worry about it if I was getting paid for it, and it wouldn't be the same stakes.
Mhm.
But knowing that the end goal is larger than myself, knowing that other people's perspectives are not the same as mine, and the information they have is not the same as mine. So it's hard to. I had a boss that used to say, "I can't hold someone accountable for something I didn't tell them to." And that's like
I love
even the smallest things. Like just tell me when you're going to be on vacation. Like
that.
how do I tell my boss I'm going to be on PTO? Like what do they expect? They expect an email. They expect just calendar invite or what? But like little things like that. If I haven't told someone that's what I expect, I
Mhm.
can't be mad if they do something a different way than I expected, because they come from a completely different background. They may have been used to something else. And when people are heated and they don't have all the information, you're not going to solve it. I'm not going to convince somebody in the heat of the moment. Um, and I know that, and there's not really any reason to hurt egos or hurt feelings of other people. It doesn't get us anywhere. We still got to work with these people later. So I try to keep that in mind. I really try to not take things too personally, because I want to be the best at what I'm doing. And I know I have to falter a little bit to get there. So owning up, taking ownership of what's been done wrong,
Mhm.
um, and keeping in mind the end goal. And when you do get too heated, you have to find a way to set yourself out of it. If I've got to step away, we need to take a break. You and I both worked with the same VP who's retired, and I'll say his name, and if we don't want to leave it in, we can cut it out. Rajaram Narayan was my boss when I started at Dematic, and I absolutely adore Raja. Raja is brilliant,
Yeah.
and he was a fantastic mentor. And one of the things that he did in really big meetings with other VPs and execs, when people would ask him a question, and he would take his time to answer, and he would sit in silence, and it really bothered people. He would just sit there and think, and then he would give an answer. And sometimes the answer would be, I need to get back to you. I'm not ready to give an answer. And I asked him about that in our one-on-ones, and he told me, when you get to a level where a lot of people are waiting to hear your answer and then go and take action, you don't get to say your answer more than once. You say it once, and then it's repeated by 20 other people. So he's like, I don't want to give an answer until I'm confident that I'm going to give an answer that's going to be beneficial for everybody. So he would think about it, and he wouldn't misspeak ahead. He wouldn't say something before he was comfortable, and he may even leave the meeting and not give an answer because he wasn't ready, which was incredibly frustrating for a lot of people. He would come back, but
Yeah.
it really kind of taught me, like if I just spoke with my emotion first, I'm
Mm.
probably not going to give the right answer. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's best to not speak and wait. So yeah, that was a brilliant lesson from a person I respect a lot.
Yeah.
He was a fantastic leader.
He was. I have like a mind blown moment right now, because that is probably one of the most incredible examples of true emotional intelligence in a leader. Because you're right. There's something that I hope every leader understands, but your words carry so much weight. And if you don't understand the gravity of every sentence that you state in a room of other people, whether it's your peers or direct reports, I think you're missing the importance of your role. And I love I mean, I love Raja as well. He's a brilliant engineer and an incredible example of how you can go from being the technical doer to leading a strategy, but leading it well and providing a vision for where you want things to go, but also knowing that you are still going to be a technical voice that other leaders have to lean on, and you need to understand the weight of what that means. I love that story, and it is a perfect encapsulation of him, and it does speak a lot. It gives me a lot of insight into my experiences with you as well, because there were plenty of situations where we were in meetings and certain people would want answers, and you would very clearly say, that's just not something I can give you right now. I can come back to you. I need to go sit with my team and we need to talk about this. And it is challenging for some people because there's this sense of I want to run, I want to go, I want to do, and we want to move fast. Whether you're in a startup environment or a corporate environment, everybody wants to get something done, but the stakes are different in each of those situations. And when you're in a big company with a lot of moving parts, it's really hard to make hard right turns, right? You've got a big ship and you need to be very mindful about how you steer that. Whereas, and if you fail, right, you have sometimes a bigger impact if you steer the ship in the wrong direction and you physically hit an iceberg versus in a startup environment. Like, you can make hard right turns all day long and end up in the exact same place, but there hasn't been as much organizational impact as it would be in a very large company.
And I think that applies not just to leadership. I really enjoyed, for a while in my career, I was teaching mechanical engineers and software engineers how to write controls code.
Mm.
And one of the things that Raja taught me, which was just kind of a more mature way of stating kind of some of that experience of trying to think of what are the outcomes from what answer I give, what outcomes do I expect to happen,
Mm.
and am I going to get those results based on what I say? So, training controls engineers are people to write controls logic for machine controllers, trying to explain the what does the controller know to a young engineer. Like, you went to school for mechanical engineering, or you went to school for electrical engineering. You know what the sensors do, you know what the things can do, and you know what the machine should do. But what does the machine know when it's doing its task? Does it have a sensor to know that the product fell out of the gripper? And if
Mm.
it doesn't, how does it know it dropped the product? At what point will it realize that it's no longer carrying the product? And how much damage has it done by the time it gets to that point? And thinking about things from that failure perspective. When I give an answer as a leader, what is my team going to do about it? Who are they going to tell what I just said? Not like I'm concerned about
Yeah.
gossip, but they're going to take this to their team, to their groups, or to their work, and then work based on what I said. So what outcome am I going to get? Am I going to get the outcome that I want? Am I going to get the outcome that they also want? That's really important. And it applies even as a direct contributor. When I design something, if I work in R&D, the guy who's going to use this in the field, how is he going to perceive what I'm making? Like, how is it going to be used downstream? How's it going to be supported? If I'm working in the field and I install something, how's the customer service downstream going to handle it later when something breaks? Did I document it well enough? Even for myself to go back and support it later. If someone calls me later and says, hey, something broke, what did I leave behind that is going to impact myself or someone else? And I think that applies to any role, really, like understanding what your output today impacts in the future, whether it's you or it's somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Really important. It's kind of a maturing point. The younger me was, let's go, let's solve all the problems. I want to boil the ocean. I want to burn everything down and start from new, but not thinking about the downstream consequences of what I was doing.
Yeah.
As much as I try to have that foresight now.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but it is a very teachable and learnable skill to be mindful of what comes next. And you were also talking a lot about just the simple clarity as a leader, making sure, whether, to be fair, right, whether you're an individual contributor or a leader, having the clarity and being very direct with what outcome you're looking for instead of speaking in corporate speak where the language doesn't mean anything, and every company has its own lexicon, like synergy and optimization. That doesn't I need you to tell me exactly what it is that we're trying to do with this initiative. What exact outcome are you hoping to achieve? And I know for me as an engineer, I really struggled with the ambiguity that I would get from a lot of my leadership. And like, well, we just need to be faster. Okay, what does faster mean to you, right? Faster could mean it's physically getting to site faster, it's being assembled faster. It could be us doing the drawings. We get those out the door faster. We get internal checks and balances done more efficiently. Faster is a really big term that could mean anything. So I need you to be more specific with me. How do you think that you've learned to do that, to kind of balance the specificity without being too micromanagey? Because there's a line of I need you to do this exact thing versus this is the objective and you guys have freedom to hit that objective. So how have you managed to define the art of setting clear direction and objectives without micromanaging down to here's the exact tasks I need you guys to perform?
That is not easy, and it's not a one size fit all. A lot of it comes from listening, asking my team or individuals to repeat back what I just said. And not just to make sure they're listening, but tell me what you think I meant by that. Like, what are you going to do with what I just gave you? And if their answer doesn't go where I'm wanting it to go, then I either didn't give them enough, or I gave them too much and over constrained them maybe, or they're frustrated when they answer because I did give them too much and they felt like they were capable of filling in those gaps themselves. And it is unique to each person. I had a really young engineer on my team at Dematic that was learning a completely new skill set from what she had done previously. And she'll know who she is. Absolutely brilliant. I really liked her on my team, but she wanted to do so well and would want to pre-discuss the outcome in detail as we talked. Because she really wanted to understand, like, what is the expectation on the end result? Because she was doing something she had never done before. She was absolutely brilliant. So I knew she was going to be good at it. And she was very good at it. But like understanding why, like me explaining why simple things of the wording of a requirement was poor, and why it was poor, not just like that it was wrong and rewrite it, but why was it bad so that she can apply that to other things. Like how is the team that's going to consume this document going to react that we're writing? And then how is it going to be tested? How are we going to support it in the future? What happens if we change something down the road? How does this requirement, this one individual line that you just wrote, contribute to that? And explaining the logic behind that. And I had other engineers who were very intuitive that didn't need all that explanation. They would think through it. And a lot of times I would give them less than I would give someone that was like that craved to understand what good looked like and wanted to understand that. But really defining the outcomes is really important. And a lot of it kind of comes with trial and failure, especially when you're managing other people, because nobody's the same. You may have to I don't want to say micromanage. I don't mean it by negative, but some people want that support more than other people.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to get the best out of your team is not a small task. It is a tough thing to do. But yeah, because it is definitely a spectrum.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's this misconception when we move into leadership that we can just do one thing and everything will work, right? Oh, I'm just going to set the strategy and everybody will figure it out, right? Or we think we're leading a bunch of people like us and what we were like as individual contributors. And we think that, oh, well, I was able to figure it out with little insight or little hand holding. Why can't they? But it takes that self-awareness and to understand that no, everybody is a unique human and I'm going to have to lead every single one of you differently. Like I cannot treat every single one of you the exact same way, just like you can't treat every human in your life the exact same way, right? You're going to treat your wife very differently than you treat your best friend, both wonderfully, right? But it's going to be a different relationship. I love the way you put it. It's something you learn in real time. It's something that you can practice. In my experience, I practiced those skills when I was a project manager or I was the lead engineer, because even in those roles, yes, I'm an individual contributor, but you can still practice leading different people with different backgrounds and different personality types without being the authority, leading with influence versus authority. And I think, at least in my experience, that was something that helped me be a better leader, was practicing it while I was an individual contributor before I ever actually got the knighthood title of people leader.
Yeah. My even things like watching a movie with my wife whose job is to think about how people think. And I'll admit, I like a good romance movie. She doesn't. I like some drama. And she does that every day for her job. So she doesn't want to watch anything dramatic. She wants to watch a superhero movie or something. So we have like completely opposite of what I guess would be typical expectation between what we prefer to watch. And it like a really dramatic movie just really frustrates her because it's usually just that people don't talk. Communication is broken.
Yes.
And that's true in the workforce as well as an individual. So, I mean, we're talking about leadership a lot, but I think even as a message for the individual contributor who's sitting there in your role and wanting to understand how do I be better at what I'm doing, communicate what you need to your manager. It's their job to provide those things for you. If if you feel like I need more detail, ask for it. There's nothing embarrassing about asking for it. One of my going all the way back to that first job is in the machine vision world. That manager told me, "You're more powerful to me if you know that you don't know something than knowing everything." And he was telling the cocky college graduate version of me that, but he was very right. And it was, if you know that you don't have all the information, or you know that you don't know how to do something, there's no shame in that. I mean, that's that's a growth opportunity. That's, I need to build this team better. Nobody wants you to fail, and nobody wants to fail. So knowing that you don't know something is really powerful, and knowing to ask for help on those things, knowing to tell people this is what I expect. And as a leader, even small things like telling my team, you can message me on Teams or in chat if you want a quick answer that doesn't hold a lot of weight, or you just want to chit chat, or you want to bounce something off me and you want me to give an answer and then you're going to go and think about it. You can send me a message. If you want an answer that I've thought about and that you want me to champion for you, you want me to make a decision on a project, I want it in an email so I can think about it. And if it's just a Teams message, I'm not going to put a lot of thought into it. I'm happy to chit chat, but if you want me to think about it and give you a real firm answer that you can run with and tell other people that was Blake's answer, that needs to be in the form of an email. That's just how I like to communicate. Everybody else doesn't want to communicate that way.
Yeah.
But telling that to my teams gives them the room to be successful in what they're doing. They know how to get what they need from me. And it goes both ways. The individuals communicating to your manager what you need is really important.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that specifically because we are fresh off this writing spree, talking about different roles and how it's not clear enough in engineering that there's so much more, right? There's not one size fits all when it comes to an engineering job. And it is really important for us to communicate what we need to our leaders. And it's really important for us as leaders to make sure that we're being really clear about what the role requires. So I want to unpack this together because we started that whole newsletter series because we were sharing a little, I'll just call it disappointment, in the fact that we'd both had experiences in our careers where we thought we were signing up for something only to be disappointed when we got to the role, the job, the situation. I know for me, for example, I became an engineer because I wanted to do tangible things. I wanted to actually be able to use tools to build things and be able to point to things and say, I did that. I built this. I contributed to this. And on one of my first job sites, I literally got my hand slapped. I went to pick up a tool and the installer literally slapped me and said, don't touch that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm pretty sure it was like a wrench. I don't know. why can't I touch this? And he's like, that's not your job. Your job is to sit over there, sit on your hands and make sure the customer doesn't come bother me. And it was this, okay, that's not what I thought my job was, but if that's what you think it is, I do want to make sure that I'm making sure you are successful in what you need to do. But it was essentially, that's what the job was. I was unfortunately a very highly paid babysitter when it came to being on the job site. I would do the drawings in the office, and then when I actually got to put on my hard hat and my steel toes and actually what I thought was going to be really getting to do the engineering, getting my hands dirty, I was not allowed to do it. And I kind of just fell out of love with the role. But I did love, talking to people, and I did love talking to customers and solving problems for people, but they were, emotional problems because they're all project management problems and tensions are high. So what has been, to just kind of go back to that conversation for a minute?
It's different, I think, in a small business because the asks are ambiguous, and the goal on the wall that everybody's going after, and especially in a startup, is like succeed. The ask in those environments is wear all the hats. Like the problem just needs to be solved. We don't care how or who solves it. Like you may have to do something you're not used to doing, and that's not true in more mature company environments. That whole thought process of going down like the classifications of like types of engineering functions, because I guess we don't have to spoil everything about the series. Please go and read it.
Yeah.
Because I think we put a lot of thought into it. I think it was really good. I'm very much that concepting engineer. Not 100%, but I'm very much that. I like some ambiguity. I like some boundaries and kind of an end goal. I loved being in the startup environment because it was exactly that. We have a fixed amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to make money before we run out of that money. And this is the type of customers that we told the investors we were trying to go after. And we have these people interested that could buy something, and we just need to fill in this. Like I liked that level of ambiguity. Yeah. It was very creative, but I also did applications work we would design and then go and install. And I did not like the application side where I was just taking something that I didn't design and just integrating it. And I know that is a lot of engineering is exactly that.
Yeah.
And it is a very necessary thing because businesses need to be profitable, and you can't, if you bespoke build every single thing you do, you're not going to be a big business. And it's just the unfortunate nature of economic things scale with repetition. And I knew that that was part of my experience too in the aerospace world, was things were so kind of narrowed and pigeonholed to specializations that people would be really good at. But I didn't like that box. I wanted that larger scope and ambiguity, which is kind of what most of my career went through. But there's definitely different mindsets and EQ superpowers, as you put it, with these different types of roles, even with the same degree. I've got a mechanical degree, but I want to do like the sales side or the concepting or the execution engineer, the implementation engineer. But yeah, it is a different ask. And if you are living through that whole life cycle and even having the foresight to understand that the ask of you at these different points in this project life cycle are different,
Yeah.
and what that means at those different stages, just the understanding of that beforehand would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I think to anybody.
So if I go back and kind of summarize a little bit, it's not that you have been very fortunate. I'll put it this way. So you have been very fortunate to always know what you were signing up for. Like the roles that you've had have been either clear enough or ambiguous enough that you knew you were going to have to wear a lot of hats, or you knew exactly what hat you were putting on. But through those roles, you figured out what you like and what you don't like. And that's kind of helped us put together this like classification of engineers that we kind of unpack in the newsletter. The ideation engineers, those of us that are really love kind of the art of the possible, right? Dreaming really big, taking on really big problems and using our engineering skill set to define what's possible, but also stretch it a little bit, right? And those are also the people, right, that we talked about that are very comfortable in front of customers. They're comfortable with the future selling that comes with being in front of customers and working with sales teams. And then we have the conceptors. Hey, we've got this harebrained idea, right? This really big idea. How do we kind of put some meat around it, give it teeth, make sure that it is something that we can put into practice and make it feasible? And then we hand it to, and that's where you've spent a lot of your career, right? Taking something that is somewhat ambiguous and we don't know how, but here's my finite boundaries that we need to make sure that it becomes real. And then you have your actual implementation engineers that take this design and put it into real customer sites. And sometimes are those of us that are on job sites for 6 weeks when we should have been there for 3 and actively writing code in front of your customer. Some of us don't like that. Some of us love it. But that goes back to the reason that we want these kind of classifications to be a little bit more clear for us as engineers, because some of us love that rush. Some of us love to be literally solving problems in real time. We love it. Some of us thrive in it. Some of us don't. Some of us just want to dream big and then hand off the detail stuff to other people. And I know we've kind of talked about this through the series, but I want to talk about it a little bit here. You've been able to do kind of all of these at some point in your career. Did any of them feel the most comfortable for you? And did they also follow your, I'd say, leadership trajectory as well?
Yes, I am the concepting engineer. That's my happy place. I am perfectly happy, which I think is going to be the case for most people, in any of the other roles as well. But I have to scratch that itch for that concepting function. A lot of what I did, especially working in smaller businesses, you wear all the hats. So I was in the full cycle of winning the projects, concepting the projects, executing the design, and then going on site and installing the stuff that I made. And that is true for a lot of engineers, and then there's also the flip of that where you live in one of those roles the entirety of your career. I am very much comfortable in the concepting. I like to see my things come to life, and I like to help in getting those things working, and I like to understand the detail work that's behind the concepts and even contribute to it. But my happy place is definitely in that concepting. And that's not true of everybody. I've had a complete mixed bag working in my teams that obviously would have been much more comfortable in different functions. And figuring out how to manage a team like that to get things done helps a lot.
Yeah. And I know for me, most of my career, I think of it as like a spear. I started my career as like an implementation engineer, where I was what I called inheriting the problems, and you had to just fix it. job site. And it drove me nuts because I knew that I could fix it if I had known about it before we got to site. So then I slowly moved into an execution role, right? Where I'm like, okay, let me move into the manufacturing space. Let me better improve the way things are coming to my job site. Then I moved into concepting, where I was actually able to do estimation work. I actually was a partner with one of our salesmen in our small office, and I concepted everything that he sold. And it was really fun because I had the experience to know, I know that this is going to take longer because of the design that we are selling, or I know actually it's not going to be as many hours of project management or engineering, so I can save the customer money in these spaces. But then I eventually made it to what I kind of call that tip of the spear, that ideation space, which is where we work together, was in R&D, right? You are essentially hearing all of the challenges that customers have been facing in lots of different departments. And now you get to create something that solves hopefully all of them, right? You're really on the cutting edge of something. And I found that to be the most fun for me, kind of dreaming big and thinking about the big picture ideas. But throughout my engineering career, I very quickly learned that I can manage the details from a project standpoint, but I'm not a granular detail person. I get I don't want to say bored, but it might be bored.
Board is okay. I think once I've seen the answer at the
Yeah.
end, the interest to solve it. I mean, I've already solved it. The interest to follow through kind of falls away.
Yes.
And I think that, I mean, that's common for a large set of people. That's why I would classify myself in that concepting role.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you for that.
I know that you've got to get it done at the end of the day, and I've been in roles where I had to get it done, and people will follow through. I mean, it is a job,
Mhm.
but yeah, the most fulfilling part was solving the problem when there was an unknown at the end, and then once the known is there, it kind of.
Mhm.
But some people are completely uncomfortable working that space,
Mhm.
and they want to take that known end point and then fill in the gap.
Yes.
So like understanding that there is a difference between you and I, and two different people, like, is really important. I think will benefit everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's also an important sense of fulfillment that engineers can get when we are actually in roles that fulfill that core part of us. Whether it's, I love the detail stuff, or I love firefighting in real time, or I love big picture stuff. And when it comes to just that lack of fulfillment that we're seeing in engineering, and I will look up the actual, or I'm not familiar with the exact stat, but I think it's somewhere around, I want to say like 50% of engineers end up leaving engineering after 5 years into the corporate world because it's not what they thought it was. And they either move into project management or engineering management or completely change spaces entirely. There's so many of us engineers out there that actually leave engineering because it's not what we thought it was going to be. It's not one of these four spaces. And as leaders, we have an opportunity to be a lot more clear with how we're defining roles and being a lot more clear with what we're really asking of people in those spaces as well.
Yep, fully agree. My wife likes to make lists for everything, even things like grocery shopping. Fun fact about me, I was a sous chef in college. I really like to cook. And just going grocery shopping, she wants to have a list before we go. And I just want to go and look at the food and think about what I could create.
Ooh.
I like to go to the pantry and see what's here and see what I can come up with. Whereas she wants to make sure we have enough food to feed the kids. Like, that list is very valuable, but it has two completely different approaches to the same small task. Completely different type of approach to those things.
Yeah. No, I'm with you in that. I'm very much the person that I think of it as like a fun design challenge. Okay, what can I make today? What do I have in my fridge and what can I make with it today? But I also make a list before I go to the grocery store so I know, okay, these are the staples that I know I need to have to make whatever it is that I want when I get to the grocery store. But I love that.
Flip of that is I go to the grocery store and she's told me something to get and I just kind of pause. I get stuck in panic. Where is this in the grocery? Like, how do they organize this place? Like, I can't find anything. I'm standing in the aisle where the Band-Aids are, but I don't see Band-Aids.
Okay, so we've talked about your origin story. We've talked a lot about really like the best and worst engineering roles and situations that we've been in, that you've been in. And we've really weaved this into the whole conversation, but EQ skills that we don't even realize are emotional intelligence skills, but they are, right? So much of your leadership journey, just holding that space and letting people letting people fail, giving yourself the opportunity to pause and being mindful of the words that you use and the language that you use when you are giving direction, being clear versus micromanaging, being able to clearly articulate to each unique individual what they need. And then we've talked about our really fun newsletter series, which I really want everyone to go read. But I want to kind of wrap us up with any additional either tips or books or resources that have really helped you develop into this engineering leader, that have really helped you kind of build your emotional intelligence, build those social skills, just help you be a more impactful engineering leader.
Yeah, I think the most impactful growth learning part of my trajectory has been heavily on the input of my wife, which having a therapist is at home is invaluable. But the understanding of the perspective of others, and that it's not the same as your perspective, whether it was from their life experience, the knowledge that they have going into what you're discussing, their emotional state at the beginning of the, whether they're in a place where they can actually listen to you or not. Um, understanding that the differences between your own perception of the work environment, of the task, of the outcome, and that someone else's may be different.
Mm-hmm.
Just that perspective really helped, even as a contributor, and then moving into leadership, incredibly. Just the idea that we're not all the same, and the way that we understand things is not all the same, and different people need different things to get to the end. Is incredibly powerful, and I think is what makes people really good leaders. But yeah, we talked about the book by Simon Sinek, Start with Why. I think it's fantastic.
Yes.
Even there was another book by Aaron Meyer called Culture Map that they had our org read, because we were a big global org and dealing with all these different people from different cultural backgrounds and different expectations. We did calibration in as leaders HR would do calibration, and it was always kind of the running joke of Eastern Europe are calibrating with the European colleagues, like Germany. I'm not just going to dump on Germans, but nothing is ever a 10 in that culture. And Americans love everything. That's awesome. That's a 10. So like when you looked at how we rated each other, our own team members, like we had to calibrate and level out that what I'm calling a 10 is what you might be calling an 8. And those people deserve the same recognition, and discussing like what it meant, why we categorize people in that way. But things like that are just, I mean, just reading the Culture Map book it's still on my shelf, and it's still there's a reference in the back where you can go and look like how I'm an American. I'm thinking of it as an American. How does Korea approach these situations? And there's kind of a really quick shorthand thing in the back of that book that's really helpful that everyone should see.
Yes.
Especially if you work on a global team. Things that I would tell the younger version of myself is don't be afraid to fail. Because coming up through education and academia, and you go into school, and you feel like you're not allowed to fail because you're graded on everything, and your future seems to depend heavily on those grades, and it does. And when you get into the workforce, failure is not uncommon. Rebounding, how you respond to failure is the make or break between you having a really positive career trajectory and you really struggling and frustrating, being frustrated. But don't be afraid to fail. Fail fast. Fail early. Raja, that we talked about, used to always say, like, fail fast. Like, we need to rework this process so that we find the failure sooner, because it costs more later. Yeah. Big pro tip. Fail. Don't be afraid to fail, and admit you failed, and be better about it, and use that failure as knowledge to influence your future decision.
I love it. Well, thank you, Blake. This was really fun. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did.
I did. It was great. Yeah. Great to talk to you.